The night Queen Adaeze turned 18, she learned that monsters don't always hide in the dark. They sometimes live under the same roof. Her uncle, a respected man in the community, had come to her room, whispering promises of riches and fame if she would be a good girl for him. Her heart pounded in terror as she shoved him away, running to her mother, only to be told to stay silent and not bring shame to the family. That night, Adaeze made a vow. She would not let anyone control her destiny. If no one was willing to fight for her, she would fight for herself. Growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, Adaeze always felt like an outsider in her own home. Her father was a strict, traditional man who believed a woman's greatest achievement was marriage, while her mother, though loving, was bound by cultural expectations. But Adaeze had a different dream. She would stare at old beauty pageant magazines, imagining herself in elegant gowns, standing before fashion cameras. Every time she brought it up, her father scoffed, telling her that beauty fades. But a woman's duty to her husband and children never does. Still, she clung to her dreams, hiding them like forbidden treasures. One day, while at the market, she saw a flyer for a local beauty contest. Her heart raced as she tore it down, stuffing it into her bag like a stolen secret. That night, she read every word, excitement bubbling in her veins. But there was a problem. She had no money for the registration fee, and she knew her father would never give it to her. Desperate, she decided to use the little savings she had from selling handmade jewelry, even though it was meant for her school expenses. It was a risky decision, but she was willing to gamble her future for a chance to shine. The day of the competition arrived, and Adaeze wore a borrowed dress, her nerves threatening to consume her. As she stepped onto the stage, the whispers began. She wasn't light-skinned enough. Her features were too strong. She looked too local. But when she introduced herself, speaking with confidence she didn't even know she had, the audience fell silent. She spoke of dreams, of defying expectations, of refusing to let society dictate her worth. The applause that followed shook her to her core. That was the moment she knew this was where she belonged. Against all odds, Adaeze won the competition. The crown felt like a dream, the sash-like armor against every doubt she had ever faced. But her victory was short-lived. When she got home, her father was waiting, his face dark with rage. He grabbed the crown from her head and threw it to the ground, his voice shaking as he accused her of disgracing the family. "No daughter of mine will sell herself on a stage like a common harlot," he spat, his words cutting deeper than any wound. Adaeze felt her world crumble, but deep inside, a fire had been lit, one that would never die. That night, as she sat in her room, clutching the broken pieces of her crown, she realized something painful yet powerful. No one was going to hand her success. She would have to take it. She wiped her tears, picked up the shattered crown, and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." She knew the road ahead would be filled with pain, betrayal, and battles she wasn't ready for. But one thing was certain: Queen Adaeze was not meant to be silenced. She was meant to shine, no matter the cost. Fame came faster than Adaeze expected, but with it came betrayal sharper than any knife. After her victory at the local pageant, she was invited to a regional competition, one that promised exposure to international platforms. She could hardly believe it. Her dreams were unfolding before her eyes. But there was one obstacle. The entry fee was far beyond what she could afford. Desperate, she turned to her best friend, Kemi, for help. Kemi had always been her biggest supporter, but when Adaeze confided in her, she saw something flicker in Kemi's eyes. Envy. It was subtle, but enough to make Adaeze's stomach twist. A week later, Adaeze woke up to a message that shattered her. Kemi had entered the competition herself, using the money Adaeze had given her to help register. Worse, Kemi spread rumors that Adaeze had slept with the judges to win her previous title. The betrayal burned. It wasn't just losing a friend, it was losing the one person she thought she could trust. Her name was being dragged through the mud, and suddenly, the victory that once felt like a triumph now felt like a curse. She wanted to give up, to hide from the world, but deep down, she knew she couldn't let this break her. Instead of wallowing in pain, Adaeze channeled her anger into determination. She reached out to a local designer who had admired her at the last pageant, offering to model his designs in exchange for sponsorship. He agreed, and with his help, she secured a spot in the competition. When the day of the pageant arrived, she felt the weight of every whisper, every judgment, every jealous stare. But she had learned something important. Success was a lonely road, and not everyone clapped when you won. As she stepped onto the stage, she blocked out everything except the fire in her heart. The competition was fierce, but Adaeze shined brighter than she ever had before. She walked with the grace of a queen, spoke with the wisdom of a warrior, and stood with the strength of a survivor. The moment her name was announced as the winner, she felt something shift inside her. She was no longer just a girl with a dream. She was a force to be reckoned with. But as she looked at the crowd, her eyes met Kemi's. For a brief moment, she saw something unexpected: regret. But it was too late. The damage had been done. After the competition, Kemi approached her, tears brimming in her eyes. She begged for forgiveness, claiming she had been blinded by jealousy, that she missed their friendship. But Adaeze had learned her lesson. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. She looked Kemi in the eye, her voice steady. "I forgive you, but we can never be friends again." And with that, she walked away, leaving behind the girl who had stabbed her in the back. It hurt, but she knew she had to keep moving forward. That night, as Adaeze held her new crown, she realized something important. She was no longer the girl who needed people's approval. She had fought for her dreams, and she would keep fighting. But she also knew that success came at a price. She had lost friends, faced humiliation, and carried wounds that would take time to heal. Yet, she also knew one thing for certain: she was unstoppable. And this was just the beginning. Fame had its price, and Adaeze was about to pay it in ways she never imagined. After winning the regional competition, she became a sensation. Brands wanted her as their ambassador, magazines wanted her on their covers, and socialites wanted her at their parties. But with fame came predators. One evening, she received a call from a well-known businessman, Chief Alanruweju, who claimed he could secure her a spot in an international pageant. His voice was laced with power, his words dripping with promises. But Adaeze had learned that in this world, nothing came without a cost. At their meeting, Chief Alanruweju smiled as he slid an envelope across the table, filled with crisp dollar bills. "This is just a taste," he murmured, his hand lingering on hers. "If you make me happy, I will make you a global queen." Adaze's stomach twisted in disgust. The air felt suffocating, the room suddenly too small. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to run. But she knew one thing for sure: if she gave in to men like him, she would never truly be free. With a shaky breath, she pushed the envelope back and stood up. "I'll earn my crown the right way," she said, her voice firm. Walking away from that deal meant walking away from an easy path to success. But Adaeze refused to sell her dignity. However, Chief Alanruweju was not a man who took rejection lightly. Within days, rumors started swirling. Whispers that she had slept with judges, that she was an arrogant girl who thought she was better than others. Sponsors began to withdraw their support, and suddenly, the doors that had once opened so easily were slamming shut in her face. It was as if the industry had turned against her overnight, all because she dared to say no. But Adaeze was not a girl who crumbled under pressure. She turned to social media, telling her story without fear. "I will never sell myself for success," she wrote, her words powerful, defiant. The post went viral, sparking a conversation about the exploitation of women in the industry. Many supported her, but others attacked her, calling her ungrateful and foolish. "This is how the real world works," one comment read. "If you want to win, you must play the game." But Adaeze refused to believe that power only belonged to those willing to sell their souls. Just when she thought things couldn't get worse, her father fell seriously ill. She rushed home, the sight of him frail and weak breaking her heart. The same man who had once thrown away her crown now needed her help. The hospital bills were overwhelming, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on her. The easiest solution would have been to take the money offered to her, but she knew she could never live with herself if she did. Instead, she took up a job teaching young girls modeling and confidence, using her struggles to empower them. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. One of her students, the daughter of a famous philanthropist, introduced her to a mentor who admired her courage. This woman, Madame Adaeze, was a former beauty queen who had built her own empire without compromising her values. "You remind me of myself," she told Adaeze, "and I will help you." With Madame Adaeze's guidance, Adaeze got a legitimate sponsor for the international pageant, one that didn't require selling herself. The moment she stepped onto that grand stage, she knew she had won even before the competition began. As she stood there, wearing a gown she designed with local artisans, she realized that this victory wasn't just hers. It was for every girl who had been told she wasn't enough, for every woman who had been pressured to trade her worth for success. The crown on her head was more than a title. It was proof that integrity and perseverance could still win in a world that tried to break her. But deep down, she knew her journey was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. Winning the international pageant should have been the ultimate triumph, but Adaeze soon realized that the real battle had just begun. The media painted her as a national treasure, a young woman who had defied all odds to put Nigeria on the global stage. However, behind the glitz and glamour, powerful figures still saw her as a threat. Chief Olanrewaju, humiliated by her refusal to play by his rules, used his vast network to sabotage her career. Several brand deals mysteriously fell through, and former allies in the industry began distancing themselves from her. It was clear someone was pulling the strings to see her fall. The threats escalated when Adaeze received an anonymous message that sent a chill down her spine. "Stay in your place or disappear," it warned, written in bold red ink. Fear gripped her, but she refused to back down. Instead, she turned to social media, exposing the corruption she had faced and rallying young women to speak out. Her campaign, Queens Without Chains, became a viral movement, inspiring countless girls to share their stories. What started as whispers turned into a storm, shaking the very foundations of the beauty industry. But the more powerful she became, the more dangerous her enemies grew. One night, as she drove home from a late event, a black SUV followed her closely. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong. She made sharp turns, but the car stayed on her tail. Heart pounding, she accelerated, weaving through the streets until she found a crowded marketplace and swerved in. The SUV sped past, unable to follow without attracting attention. Shaken but alive, Adaeze realized that this was not just about her career anymore. It was about survival. Someone wanted to silence her permanently, and she had to be ready for whatever came next. Despite the danger, Adaeze refused to hide. She took her fight to the highest level, exposing the dark underbelly of the industry in an explosive live interview. Her revelation sent shockwaves through the country, forcing law enforcement to open investigations into powerful figures who had preyed on young women for decades. Some of the most influential men in the industry were arrested, including Chief Olanrewaju. But even as justice seemed within reach, Adaeze suffered a devastating loss. Her father, the man who once doubted her, passed away after a long illness. The grief was unbearable. She had fought so hard to prove herself to him, and just when he had finally seen her worth, he was gone. Kneeling beside his grave, she let her tears fall, whispering, "I hope you're proud of me, Papa." The pain was overwhelming, but it also gave her clarity. She realized that everything she had endured, the betrayals, the threats, the sacrifices, had shaped her into the woman she was meant to be. She could not let her father's death break her. Instead, she would turn her pain into purpose. Determined to create lasting change, Adaeze founded the Royal Path Initiative, an organization dedicated to empowering young women through education, self-confidence, and career development. She partnered with schools, businesses, and global leaders, ensuring that no girl would have to fight the same battles she did. Within a few years, her foundation had changed thousands of lives, offering scholarships, mentorship, and career opportunities to young women across Africa. Through her relentless efforts, she proved that a queen's true legacy was not in the crowns she wore, but in the lives she uplifted. Years later, as Adaeze stood before a crowd of young women eager to follow in her footsteps, she smiled, knowing she had finally found her true purpose. "A queen is not defined by beauty or fame," she said, her voice steady with conviction. "A true queen is defined by her strength, her integrity, and the lives she touches." The audience erupted in applause, and in that moment, Adaeze knew this was the greatest victory of all. She had not just won a title, she had won her freedom. And with that, this part of Adaeze's legendary journey comes to a breathtaking close. But this is not the end, far from it. The next will take you even deeper into a world of adventure, mystery, and shocking twists you never saw coming. What new challenges await? What secrets remain untold? You won't want to miss what happens next. Stay tuned for the next thrilling stories. It's bigger, bolder, and more suspenseful than ever. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep the legend alive. See you in the next adventure. Stay tuned.